So Mr. Brown, I really don't know very well, but Mr. Polyev, as much as I'd go and have a beer with him and watch a hockey game, truth of the matter is, Justin Trudeau or Pierre Polyev for me is the same thing, just wearing a different blazer. At the end of the day, I think both of them are very well coached to repeat or to deviate and not answer the questions. The other problem is, I've always said, so when I wanted to run as leader in the last campaign, somebody said to me, but you have no political experience. I said, well, with the politicians we've had in the last 2 years, I'm hoping we're putting somebody with zero political experience.
Vincenzo Guzzo, also known as Mr. Sunshine, was present at Mr. Jean Charest event in Montreal for the Conservative Party of Canada leader race. In 2018, Mr. Guzzo joined the cast of the CBC reality show Dragon Den. He also owned several businesses, including the famous Guzzo movie theater in Quebec. In 2022, following the departure of the Conservative leader Erin O'Toole, Vincenzo Guzzo hinted that he might be interested in running for the leadership of the Conservative Party. I spoke with Mr. Guzzo, who, for his part, supports Jean Charest candidacy. Here is the interview he gave me. So we know that Mr. Charest was the premier of Quebec, but for the Liberal Party. Now he's running for being the leader of the Conservative Party. What do you think about that?
Well, look, I think you got to remember there's in some provinces there is no Conservative Party, provincially speaking, right? So at the time that he came into provincial politics, the Federalist Party that regrouped all of the federals, and no matter whether you were liberal, conservative, whatever, was the Liberal Party of Quebec. So, I mean, if you wanted to defend the unity of Canada in Quebec, the only party that could do that was the Liberal Party of Quebec. And so being its leader was just a legitimate transition towards that. The other thing is, as a leader of that party, he did implement very conservative-minded fiscal policies and so forth. So, it's not the label. I think in BC, if I remember well, there's the Liberal Party of, or Manitoba, one of the provinces out west. There's a Liberal Party that's more conservative than maybe most conservative parties, right? So the label doesn't really mean anything.
And we know that his name was involved in the Mashuri investigation. We know that a lot of Quebecers have lost their trust for Mr. Charest. Is that the case for you?
No, I mean, I wouldn't have supported him, and I'm here as co-chair of the fundraising for Quebec for his leadership. So you got to remember, I'm a Quebecer Canadian of Italian origin. So if there's anybody who's been labeled all kinds of stuff because of my success in business, it's me. So I guess it's one of the sad things. But what I am happy about is that he wasn't found innocent. He was just not at all accused of anything, which is, I think, what's important here. It's not a question of, they went after him and they couldn't find him guilty. The idea was they didn't even go after him. I mean, there was nothing to say about that. And at the end of the day, I think, that ultimately it's already hard enough. Public life is hard enough that if we have to keep grudges on stuff like that, it just doesn't make sense. I think, at the end of the day, we have a potential leader of a party and a potential prime minister who can unite the country, who can explain, to Quebecers why, we have to unite with Alberta and the rest of the country and why we're one country. He was, Captain Canada in the 95 referendum. So I have no problem supporting him.
So why more him than Mr. Pierre Polyev or Mr. Brown, example?
So Mr. Brown, I really don't know very well, but Mr. Polyev, as much as I'd go and have a beer with him and watch a hockey game, truth of the matter is, Justin Trudeau or Pierre Polyev for me is the same thing, just wearing a different blazer. At the end of the day, I think both of them are very well coached to repeat or to deviate and not answer the questions. The other problem is, I've always said, so when I wanted to run as leader in the last campaign, somebody said to me, but you have no political experience. I said, well, with the politicians we've had in the last 2 years, I'm hoping we're putting somebody with zero political experience. And the truth of the matter is that Jean Charest had the good fortune of being a politician, but he's also had the good fortune of being in private life, And so therefore he knows what it is to be on both sides of that life. life, versus Mr. Poilievre has been a career politician. And it's a little strange to say to somebody at 42 years old, you're a career politician. It means you haven't done anything else. So how could you have really empathy for Canadians? How could you understand what the average Canadian does or doesn't do, or paying a mortgage, let's say, for an average Canadian, when every one of your salaries had a Canadian flag on it because you were an employee of the state in all intents and purposes? And I think that that's what got us into the trouble we're in today, right? Is that we've elected des beaux parleurs, as we would like to say. We've elected people with a lot nicer hair than I have, but that doesn't make them, great administrators of public funds. And we've seen that both Trudeaus have indebted us more than ever. And it happens every time. The Conservatives go in, we fix up stuff, and we finally turn the corner, and all of a sudden, we lose an election. The Liberals go back and use our hard work and use it against us, and then re-indebt us by a few $100 billion.
For being involved in the past, in the Conservative and in the leadership, why you were not in this race now?
So, COVID has had a huge impact on my family's finances. We lost $14 million and so forth. And while, it's not a problem in the sense that, we've managed to save les meubles, as we'd like to say, the truth of the matter is I would still like to put back the things the way they were pre-COVID. So I've given myself a 3-4 year window to reestablish and put back things so that my oldest son will be 28 years old by then. My dad will be a little older. And so hand off the business to family, and then maybe I will jump into the political arena and hopefully, do some good.
Did you support Mr. Erin O'Toole before he was wiped out from the Conservative Party?
So I supported Erin during the leadership race. I was his co-chair also as a fundraising for Erin. So I did think Erin would be a good leader and a good prime minister. I think that unfortunately what you also need in politics is a leader that's willing to make his decisions and not rely on communication experts, as I like to call them. And I think that there was some misguided advice given to Erin, and I think that made him stumble during the election and so forth. We ended where we were. Was I willing to cut him off and force a leadership race? I thought it was a little early, but the Pierre Poilievre team made sure that that happened, and so I'm just hoping people remember that normally he who kills the king never becomes king, right? And so I think Pierre's done that twice. His team has done twice toppled leaders. I don't think it's right.
For my last question, did you support the Freedom Convoy that was in Ottawa?
So I would tell you that I supported the initial idea of them going there and making a point. I would have loved for them to behave like the one that went to Quebec City, which is, we'll be here for the weekend, we'll leave, we'll come back. I think ultimately, it was a slippery slide that occurred, and I think what is interesting about what happened in Ottawa is how no government representative actually reached out to those people. Nobody gave them the time of day. Everybody, in French they say, ils ont joué à l'autruche, and they pretended as if nothing was, and they're just going to go away. And that is the Trudeau way, right? Trudeau just does what he wants. He does his monkey show, and then, then we get in trouble, and everybody. So I would say that I supported the idea, I supported the spirit of it, but at a certain point, there are citizens in Ottawa. Those people have the right to live, and there's no reason to do bonfires and none of that. If they really wanted to bother Trudeau, they should have gone in front of his home and not in front of homes of other people per se. But the spirit of it was, I think, well-intentioned. I think it just derailed at a certain point. But that happens often when, you're not willing to put your foot down and say, okay, enough is enough. Versus the Quebec one, I think, was way more efficient. 3 days, and then they left. And I think ça l'a ébranlé, M. Legault, assez that he started changing his tune very quickly. So, yeah.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
We want to follow all the leaders for this leadership race for the Conservative Party. If you want to follow us, we create a special page. It's called leadershipreport.ca. On this webpage, you can as well chip in for help us with our journalism. Thank you very much.